Welcome to the LA Business Podcast, your destination to hear stories of how businesses grow and scale. I'm Robert Brill, CEO of Brill Media and the host of this podcast. Now, let's jump right into this week's interview. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LA Business Podcast. Today our guest is Phil Rubin, president of TheraBreath, and TheraBreath is the third leading oral care provider in the world, and recently announced a new product, the Immunity Support Oral Spray Supplement, which supports your immune system with a convenient spray. And Phil, you've been with the company for a long time. I want to talk about this new product, but before that, I want to tell us a little bit about the story and history around TheraBreath. And full disclosure, I take my dental health super seriously. I don't mess around with it. I go to the dentist every 6 months. I do everything I have to do because I've got those Eastern European genes that make it absolutely necessary. So I've actually used TheraBreath. I was really excited to interview you because I used the product prior to us even connecting. So thanks for being with us today. Tell us about TheraBreath.
Great. First of all, thank you for being a user. We appreciate it. We're starting to run into that more and more, which is always exciting. So TheraBreath is an oral care brand. We focus on mouthwash. We make toothpaste. Now we're involved in immunity, spray vitamins and things like that. We saw a pivot over the course of the last year and a half. TheraBreath was originally started by Dr. Harold Katz, who's a dentist here in Los Angeles. I don't know if you remember his office is on Pico. Him and his brother Richard started an office on Pico where they had this really great sign that looked like a toothpaste tube squeezing out toothpaste.
Okay.
And so Dr. Katz started working on breath odor research about 25 years ago and had a series of breath clinics that he operated all over California. And the first TheraBreath formula was kind of born out of those clinics, was presented in those clinics to patients, became very, very popular. There's actually a great story about how one of the breath clinic's patients at the time was a soap opera actress who required TheraBreath being used in all kissing scenes on her rider moving forward after trying the formula.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, and that's kind of how things started to grow for Dr. Katz. And next thing you know, he had some limited distribution, and he went online, really making him an original digitally native brand, which is kind of cool considering the fact that he was starting out 25 years ago. So he went national. He made some attempts to scale. And then I was brought in to kind of help with brand building and some, product development and focus. And so we started on this path together where we basically started a conversation with a modern consumer. You're a perfect example of somebody who we want to talk to. You are concerned about oral health. Yet even as somebody who raises his hand and says, yes, this is something I'm interested in, this is a common conversation that we had when we started, which is, hey, do you look at what goes into your bread and your yogurt? Do you read the back of those packages? Do you look at the labels?
It depends on if I'm on a food kick or not. If I'm not in a food kick, then I eat everything under the sun. If I am on a food kick, if I'm paying attention to my health the way I should be, I read the labels, absolutely.
So occasionally over the course of your life, you looked at the labels, and at that point, you kind of became familiar with probably what was slightly better or slightly worse, depending on what the package said and what the brand stood for. Our question was, have you ever looked at the ingredients in your toothpaste or in your mouthwash? Most people said no, actually, I stick to bread or whatever other labels. Well, here's the point. If you're using toothpaste and mouthwash as recommended twice a day, every day, as long as you live, you will consume toothpaste and mouthwash more frequently over your lifetime than anything else other than water.
No kidding.
There's nothing else you're eating twice a day, every day. There's nothing else So those ingredients were really important. That conversation was really important. And when we started that conversation, right, because this brand, again, was digitally native, basically made by a dentist who was very concerned about what went in it. And we carried that tradition forward. Once we started that conversation, all of a sudden, things kind of changed in oral care. It allowed us to disrupt that entire industry. And now some years down the road, right, we outsell these brands that I remember as a kid being mainstay brands like Stove and Colgate, things like that. At least in the mouthwash space, that's where we find ourselves now.
So Phil,
that's basically the background. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. We're really interested to understand how companies grow and scale. So, I'm looking at your LinkedIn. It looks like you started working with TheraBreath in 2007. You have a long history with the business. Tell us a little bit about the state of the business when you started working there in 2007.
So in 2007, it was a traditional kind of entrepreneur, innovator-led business where he was trying to touch a lot of different stuff. He was trying to take some of the innovation and he was trying to apply it in a lot of different market segments because it was exciting. So the business had lots of potential and lots of premise and a focus on excellence, and also an internal culture of, the people who worked there took a lot of pride in the business. Case in point, I've been there for 13 years, but there have been employees there that have been there far longer. The first hire is still there.
Really?
Yeah, so all of that stuff, when I showed up, so there were these great bones, but what they needed was,
Sure.
a brand and a direction and somewhat of a focus in the story to tell.
So basically you have kind of like an entrepreneur's dilemma, right? You have a great product. You have a great product. You know that there's need and you solve some really important problems for the marketplace. How do you focus and where do you focus your time and energy? Of course, limited resources. All the companies in the world have limited resources. Even if you have billions of dollars, you have limited resources. Where do you focus your time and energy to build your business? So when you came in, was your job originally to okay, we got to scale this thing, we got to grow it? What was your mandate?
My mandate was marketing needed to be. There were multiple issues. So what my mandate was and what I wound up tackling were kind of different scopes. But originally the premise was that they needed to focus their marketing in a specific direction. They felt that there were a lot of false starts. The cost of the products were high because of what they were doing in terms of packaging. But really at that point, what I saw was an opportunity to improve cash flow by doing some more stuff in direct and focusing on strengths and kind of optimizing assortment and then radically restructuring the entire kind of brand and brand value proposition. So you had bones, right? But you needed a bunch of other stuff that would complement those bones to really make.
So something. Really it was okay, how do we present ourselves to the marketplace? What do we say? How do we say it? What's the key message that we want to get out there, right? So I imagine you have a number of different use cases and problems the product solves, and you're let's create a through line throughout each of those products, services, messages, etc., so that we have a unified brand in the marketplace. Is that kind of what you were doing?
But in a sense, that's what needed to happen, but it's not really what I did or what we did. What we did first and foremost is, and I think this is the truth for anybody who wants to be truly disruptive, especially in a place that's dominated by giants, right? We're up against P&G, and GSK, and J&J. Those are the people we sit next to.
Lots of money, lots of MBAs.
And lots of resources, lots of legal resources, lots of all sorts of other stuff. And a market that, that would, when you look at Hollywood productions, right? Everyone thinks that's a big deal. Consumer goods, the value of that marketplace is enormous, right?
Sure.
What do you spend more on in a year? Movie tickets or Kleenex. But so what we decided we were going to do first and foremost was build an unassailable product in terms of quality and positioning, right? We're going to build the best mousetrap. We're going to get all these other people to test our mousetrap and tell us what they thought. And if they thought it was also the best mousetrap, we're going to go out there and trumpet that. And we're going to focus on just this mousetrap and not on a bunch of other stuff too. I hate to extend that far. So what we did was we focused on developing developing a series of products that even to this day, there's no other kind of pedigree that looks like our formulations, right? We started with a formulation guideline and a series of principles in terms of how we make things, how we view it, formulas, how we view basically our long-term commitment to our customers, because in a sense, we're a subscription product, and
Right.
and we're really a partner in self-care, right? We're not a widget, nor are we, a kind of a fad-driven thing like makeup or whatever else. We're something that you're going to kind of rely on. So, how do we tell you a story from an upstart brand that is relevant to you beyond cute claims or flowers on the package or whatever? So to this day, we're the only products that are certified by, we're certified by the ADA, but we're certified vegan and vegetarian. We're certified gluten. We're certified halal. Everything's made in the U.S. Right? We self-certify a bunch of other stuff where we run panels of tests on everything that we do that I think is substantially above and beyond what anybody else in the industry does. And when we do all of that and it comes back as good or better than we expect, a greater confidence grows within our four walls about what we make, why we make it, and how good it is. And when you have that, then the rest of it isn't smoke and mirrors, right? You're out there selling something real. You're selling something important, and we charge more for it. But we speak to it to say that it's kind of the difference between Folgers and Starbucks when Starbucks showed up. Yes, Starbucks was more expensive, but you understood why you're paying more because they brought quality, right? And in a sense, that's kind of what we did in order to start our through line in terms of who we are as a brand and what we're going to say and how we're going to say it.
So the takeaway for business owners, entrepreneurs, senior marketing executives is throw money at something that you believe in and make sure that the product is excellent.
Well, at that point, it's not throwing money; it's investing, right? If you really have,
I get it. I'm saying chase. Like here's my experience here. Very first job, second job out of college. First job out of college, second job in marketing and advertising. I was working on the Sony Pictures business at Universal McCann. This was in 2004 to 2007 ish. And I was in the room when the head of marketing, there's really talented executive named Dwight Keynes. He comes in and and I'm just like lowest man on the totem pole, right? Like I shouldn't have even been in the meeting, but I was. They took care of us. And the question was about, do we spend money marketing do they spend money on marketing Spider-Man? Right? Biggest movie, a ton of buzz, 4-quadrant movie. Everyone's going to love the movie, young or old, man or women. People are going to love it. Do we spend money on Spider-Man? And the answer, the thinking was yes, because it's a dope movie. It's getting great reviews. Even though I would say a lesser executive, a lesser intuitive, a less sort of smart executive would have been like, nah, it's good. We'll be good. They actually put a lot of marketing budget against Spider-Man, even though they didn't need to.
Well, I mean, the question is, how incremental was that budget? It might have been, right? Like the savvy executives, like, we're going to take the tentpole, we're going to put it up over the top, rather than riskily coming back and saying that was the flop. Well, all of our riskier movies we can get away with,
right?
Necessarily, right? That's not going to capsize the boat. I totally get it.
But I agree, investment. This is an investment, right? So the underlying foundation is have a great product. Don't do anything if you don't have a great product.
Well, then that's why I kind of jumped on that word investment too. It's that conviction. Conviction sells, and conviction is the difference between good and great, right? If internally you're waffling or you think you still could have made it better, now don't get me wrong, you can't sit in R&D for 3 years trying to tinker, but if you either have to succeed quickly or you have to fail fast and be convinced about the next thing, right? That you're going to do, but there's a bunch of CPG companies out there that kind of sort of present 30 or 40 things every year that maybe kind of, right? There's a lot of churn that's required on the shelves in order to keep the shelves. But that's created this sub-industry within this industry of just like coming out with the latest flavor of mint just to cycle shelf space. And the consumer is not served by that. And as a matter of fact, it generates an enormous amount of waste. It's not core business. It's what's kind of developed around it because of large conglomerates. We don't have to work that way, right? We can focus on building one or two awesome products a year, and let the consumer decide whether they're relevant. Case in point, the thing that you brought up at the beginning, which is the immunity spread, right? So we saw February of 2020 as COVID was coming up, that we saw that mouthwash and oral health was going to be a piece of potentially a prophylactic treatment, right? Colloquially, it was. A lot of people were speaking towards mouthwash and zinc lozenges and all sorts of other things, which made sense to people because to them it's like it's an upper respiratory disease. It's going to come in through nose and mouth, pretty much. So if you've got something, masks, mouthwashes, whatever, that might give you some incremental opportunity for benefit. But since nobody had done any kind of studies, and we saw all this fishing in oral care from consumers in terms of how do I help myself, we thought that the right way to do it would be to try to bring immunity support ingredients, things like zinc and copper and vitamin E and vitamin D and vitamin C and a bunch of stuff that has subsequently been flagged as important. We're like, we can develop a spray version of that, right? Like people, rather than taking pills, you can spray it into your mouth. You get the vitamins, but you also get the benefit of having it in your oral cavity, etc. And again, this is happening February, March of 2020, where there's not a lot of research in the space, but we see a need. So at that point, we pivot internally and we focus all our R&D on this one particular product. And it takes us about 9-12 months to formulate a mouth spray that is designed to improve or support immune response. But there's no way that a major could do that because they've got probably 30 products in the pipe and they've all been planned out about 3 years in advance, right? And so
it's a slow process for them.
I get it. There's a lot of stakeholders, a lot of boxes to check, but being nimble, at least, when you're coming out and having that level of conviction, you say, you know what, we're going to do this, just this. We're going to do it now. We're going to try it out. Then we'll move on to the next thing. But it allows you to focus, to develop conviction.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious, how many products do you come out with typically a year?
If you're not talking about like size or flavor variants, we probably do 1 or 2 products a year.
Got it. And then you'll do some variations here and there. That's interesting. And so where, like, in terms of your marketing efforts, I mean, let's start with like the last year. I mean, the last year and a half with COVID has been a boon for any legitimate business that is helping people stay healthy.
Yeah.
How do you capitalize on that opportunity without being exploitative, right? Because you don't want to be seen as taking advantage of a situation, but you definitely have a product that people should or could be using to keep themselves healthy.
Well, I mean, great question to answer in multiple parts. One is, in terms of actually addressing people's concerns, you would have to work on, like we did, work on a specific product that addresses those concerns, not say, oh yeah, this stuff, absolutely, But because the studies aren't there, the background isn't there, that's snake oil, which we would never do. In terms of pivoting into need, yes, people really focused on their personal health over the course of the last year and a half, which is great. Oral health has seen some benefit from that. The category, mouthwash category, is relatively flat. However, our business close to doubled last year, right? We took a bunch of share, and we also expanded the overall size of the marketplace by introducing new products targeting younger people, things like that. So we didn't take advantage, and there was an opportunity to do that by saying, this is somehow relevant to COVID or pandemic. But what we did do was we read the room. We kind of tried to understand the calendar of what things will look like from, both in terms of our retail partners and consumers and everything else. And so we pulled advertising that was necessary, pushed a bunch out when things started to free up and become available. We tried to pivot into creating additional capacity because, again, we were up over 80% last year, and that was on a mature brand. In a category that was up maybe 1%.
How did you do that? What's a learning or a takeaway that, like, how can a business, a product-based business, what's the learning there that can be deployed for a service business or a product business? Is it the culmination of many years of doing great work? Is it like something just clicked, the mindset of the consumer change? Is there anything that can be replicated? What's the nugget out of that learning?
Oh, I mean, what you got to do is you got to understand that it's never going to be 100% out of one thing. It's going to be 2% out of 50 things, right?
Legit.
So, I mean, for us, it was a bunch of that. So, first and foremost, back in February, I remember sitting down with Rob's team and saying, people are going to run into massive supply chain issues. We need to prepare for that now, right? And so when we had competitors start to fall by the wayside because they couldn't get their logistics in line, they couldn't get containers filled in time, they didn't have time booked on their lines, we had product on the shelf for the most part. That was important. We pulled back all of our advertising, during stock up so that we had all of those resources to deploy later on. Plus, again, it wasn't the right time to be messaging stuff like that. And also, we were starting to approach critical mass from a growth standpoint. We had seen 20 to 30% growth per year for the last, decade or so. And then also, there was that match. And part of that match was social media. When TikTok became a thing, for some strange reason, we became a huge TikTok darling. Right?
Really?
Very interesting thing, yeah. We saw posts by major makeup influencers. All of it. Again, this has something to do with us getting ready. 2 to 3 years ago, we went to our drug partners and said, we believe we can expand the size of this set, right, the mouthwash set, by bringing in younger consumers. Younger consumers are not that interested about medical preventative. They're primarily interested about more cosmetic need. So we made this Healthy Smile mouthwash that is designed to remineralize teeth, make them more pearlescent, give you a prettier smile, and keep your breath fresh. Put it in this beautiful hot pink bottle. Gave it to various influencers. Everyone from Oprah magazine on down recommended this thing at the end of 2019. And then 2020, this hot pink bottle all of a sudden just started popping up on TikTok left and right. In TikTok hauls, in Target haul videos, and TikTok made me buy it, all these big kind of meme kind of placements. That may also have to do with the fact that we've gotten really solid BuzzFeed love for about 3 years, where they've done multiple articles featuring us. So a lot of that kind of came together. And I think we got also more attention being paid to us right as COVID was hitting, because we were using zinc and again some of these other ingredients that would have these flashpoint moments of attention.
So what's interesting, Phil, is like the underlying product doesn't change. What changes is you now have a hot pink bottle that appeals to influencers. You can do something fun with it.
Yeah, well, true. And we moved away from there from a straight bad breath, fresh breath message. So we gave them a little bit more room to play with it. Right now it's about beautiful smiles. It's a different thing, right, on Insta. And but the formula obviously changed. I mean, this is a new formulation, but yes, it's still.
Oh, the formulation did change. So you changed the formulation to focus on.
Well, I think it's a new formula, right? So we were traditionally a fresh breath. We were a fresh breath brand. Then we also became a gum health brand, right? As we expanded, then we became a dry mouth brand. So always the intention having been to provide people opportunities to solve for their oral care needs as they start to use TheraBreath and grow older. So it's fresh breath, then you move on to gum health, then dry mouth. As you got older, you use more prescription medication. But we hadn't gone kind of down the line and gone for younger before that. And so this was our Healthy Smile formula that came out about 2.5 years ago, was that approach to getting a younger audience in the mouthwash set. And it was there and hot pink and cute and didn't talk about bad breath. And
does that still exist? It does. I'm on the site now. You have a hot pink, looks like a neon blue and neon yellow, kind of like the color of Gatorade. That's cool.
Well, that brand presentation is very unique on the shelf. I'll tell you what. I mean, when I showed up, one of the first things I did was I rebranded using these particular concepts, and our distributors hated it. Right? They just
really
hated this new look. Yeah, somebody said to us, like, "Man, this is going to make my eyes bleed." I was like, that's a little part of the point, man. I mean, you got to get people to pay attention. So yeah, we have this rainbow look, and every time we add an item, that footprint grows. It becomes more colorful, more spectacular. People tend to love it.
That's awesome. So you really, I mean, with the hot pink bottle, the focus on the healthy smile formula, was it prescriptive to focus in on social media? I mean, were you like, okay, how do we get attention in a way that's kind of like interesting and much more fun than like the competitors who seem to be kind of like boring?
Yes, I mean, I think that part of it had to do with the fact that we wanted to have an honest, uncluttered, simple conversation with people about oral care, right? Like, you got to keep it kind of fun. And Dr. Katz, who's our founder, who does a lot of our TV, is excellent at that. I mean, he is. If you had him as a dentist, you wouldn't worry about going to see a dentist, right? Like he keeps it light. He doesn't make it seem kind of gross or like personal. Everyone gets bad breath. Like that's a fact, right? Everyone needs to get over it. One of the things we love to share is that there are more bacteria in your mouth right now than people on the planet.
Oh, cool. That's good to know.
Everyone, yeah, or inside the toilet, right? More bacteria in your mouth. They live there all the time, and so you just got to keep them in balance, and it's easy enough to do. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question.
So I didn't realize Dr. Katz is he a practicing dentist?
He no longer practices. He's now basically he's the CEO of the company.
CEO of this company, but he was at one point a dentist.
Absolutely, right. So
really?
Well, yeah, he had an office on Pico with his brother.
That's right, as you mentioned at the beginning. Okay, that's cool. And so fascinating. So you really took an opportunity to make your products, some of your products, formulated differently, social media friendly. Tell us a little bit about some of your other marketing efforts. I presume you work with a PR firm.
We do.
To get press.
We do. We work with PR. We work with a lot of media partners.
I've seen your remarketing ads. After I went to the site, I immediately get those remarketing ads.
Yeah, I would say that some big pieces in terms of the business part of it. I would say our Amazon relationship is incredibly important, right? We usually represent between 3 and 4 of Amazon's top 10 mouthwash SKUs and have for over a decade. So us becoming basically the biggest mouthwash player online globally before we were even top 5 manufacturers in the U.S. was a key part of our success. And I think that also that whole digitally native thing, huge volumes online thing, probably definitely helped support some of our TikTok and social popularity. But if you also look at our online listings, you'll see that we are the best reviewed items in the space. So again, ultimately, what's secret to our success? First and foremost, people love this stuff, and it's important to them.
So tell us a little bit about kind of like Amazon as a channel versus like e-commerce from your site. Tell us a little bit about kind of like how it's different to sell through Amazon.
Well, Amazon's right. It's that's definitely it's a carrot and stick relationship. Everyone says. I mean, we built it from the ground up a long time ago when we used to take trips to Seattle and meet with people in person, which hasn't happened in years. But there's a couple of important takeaways. One is you've got to have both. You've got to have levers to limit your price both up and down there. And that has a lot to do with hybrid selling and how you manage your inventory and where it's kept, and how much inventory they can hold at any given time. There's also real tricky stuff that happens on Amazon in terms of sometimes if you're in a vendor situation there, they will offload product through auction that can then be onboarded back to Amazon through 3P sellers, which will force pricing down. I mean, there's some crazy mechanisms in there that are.
How do you make sure that doesn't happen? So what's a situation where that would happen? Give us an example of like, so you're saying Amazon stores your product, Amazon then.
Okay, so here's an example of something that we saw. We saw that there were third-party sellers that were getting inventory they were bringing it back onto Amazon. And when they were listing the inventory, because the UPCs were the same, Amazon was taking, and this was about a few years back, as far as we could tell, Amazon was taking some of that inventory and aggregating it. So the existing inventory and inventory that somehow cycled out and came back in was all being placed together on personal products. And so we did some tracing there, and it seems that the way that things were working is occasionally if somebody sent something back, they would put it into Amazon warehouse, and they would auction off lots of that stuff, and then those people were buying it, putting it back on. So then we had to build an agreement there where we would take back returns rather than having repatriate them.
Wow.
But I mean, that just took, I think, probably 6 to 9 months to unwind to try to understand.
So were these third-party sellers selling the product?
Well, yeah, I guess they were basically buying it, I'm guessing, from Amazon bulk auction and putting it right back on Amazon with Amazon's regular product. And I don't know if it was because it was short dated or if they were consolidating warehouses.
Wow.
So I guess I mean, like, you know, Amazon does an enormous amount of business with us, absolutely enormous. And we value the partnership tremendously.
Of course.
But every once in a while, you'll see, you know, a premium product, you'll see price starting to wind down super fast. And then you've got to get all hands on deck to scramble and protect that price because we've got to be able to afford to make it at the end of the day. And when you do that, and these weird little levers have been tripped in these businesses that are kind of, you know, arcane and hard to find, it can be a real scramble.
So do you have different teams working on your Amazon business versus the teams who are handling your e-commerce, or is it all like is it one practice or is it multiple practices inside your organization?
It's one practice. So basically, about 3 years ago, my whole thing was we're going to sell where they are, right? It's not, we have a relationship with the customer, not so much the retailer. We have a partnership with the retailer, right? But our ongoing relationship is with our customers. They rely on us. They need access to the product. So we want to make sure that that access exists wherever the customer wants to shop. So if they want to shop at CVS or CVS.com or Amazon or Walmart or Target or whatever, we just have to have presence there, and it's always got to be robust. And we don't really want to silo our teams in a way where somebody learns something on Amazon and then doesn't instantly apply it at Target or Walmart or something else. And conversely, the other way as well. So yeah, we're platform agnostic on our e-com team, and that works really well because everybody just focuses more on their lane, right? Whether it's content or you know, media or whatever, inventory and end stocks.
So when you talk about, you know, I'm very interested in the demand generation part of a business, right? Like if I don't know about TheraBreath, how I imagine certainly PR and press people are looking for a solution, but as a human being who doesn't have my wife handles the household, right? Like whatever happens in the household, stuff just appears, it disappears. I don't know what happens, but I know my wife has a handle on it, right? And literally one day, TheraBreath just appeared. I was like, all right, cool. I guess I'm using this now. How do people discover TheraBreath?
Great question. And by the way, a lot of our media investment has always been on, I don't know how old your wife is, but typically it's female 35 plus shopping for households because they're the ones that are decision makers, right? I mean, every brand tries to skew towards those, but it just makes a lot of sense. This company works in a variety of ways. We do in-store activation, right? But I think that a lot of our early discovery where before we had the funds necessary to, I mean, we run probably $10, $12 million worth of TV media a year now. But before we could afford to do that kind of heavy lifting, a lot of it had to do with online, right? And our website still sees so much traffic where people are looking for solutions to specific oral health problems. Our direct website isn't really set up to be a competitor in our own products. That's not the point. We're there basically to educate people about our products because we know that transactions will happen, you know, at a multitude of other optimized sites like an Amazon.
Is there a push towards recurring revenue? I mean, it hadn't occurred to me until you said it at the beginning of this interview that you guys are effectively a recurring you're a subscription service. Whether you want to be it or not, you are. Is that part of your business strategy moving forward? Trying to enroll people in a subscription product, shall we say?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, not enroll, but right through quality. It's the Starbucks thing, right? I mean, Starbucks. People who go to Starbucks are subscribers. Um, for us, we see that 25% of people, once they try TheraBreath, will wind up repurchasing TheraBreath. Over half of those within 6 weeks. It's the highest rate of repurchase in the category, as far as we know, and this comes from major mass retailers, market basket studies. On Amazon, our rate of subscription is over 30%, which is astronomical, especially considering how much business we do on Amazon. But it also speaks to exponential growth. It speaks to why we're going, say, 12%, then 18%, then 20%, because we're picking up users quickly, and most of them tend to stay with us for a very long time, even if they don't necessarily buy us every month or every 2 months on a very tight cadence. They still see the value of the product, they see the results, and that definitely is the biggest driver of our growth.
Awesome. Okay, in the last few minutes, tell us a little bit about how people can find you.
Oh, so yeah, TheraBreath is available at over 100,000 doors just in North America. So basically any store you go to, if you go to Kroger or Ralph's or Vons or Albertsons or Walmart, Target, CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Amazon, wherever you basically shop, we are available. We're available in about 35 countries, everywhere from South Korea to Turkey to Saudi Arabia to Kuwait. So we're actually we're a huge phenomenon both in Japan and South Korea right now. So if you happen to be there, please pick up some of our products.
Also, TheraBreath.com, which I've had up this entire interview.
And also TheraBreath.com. Yes, please come and check out. We have tons of information available should you be interested in more oral health stuff.
What is as we wrap up here, Phil, what does the rest of 2021 going into 2022 look like for you guys? Any big key initiatives?
Well, 2022, we've got a bunch of size variants, plus we've got a bunch of new launches. We've got new retailers coming on board everywhere, everyone from Sam's Club to Urban Outfitters. So, I mean, we've got a really wide, interesting cross-section of retailers. We are, obviously, we've become a very big disruptor in mouthwash. So as we've started to, sell more mouthwash again than Colgate and Scope and Act, there's enormous amounts of M&A interest in us as would be expected, especially given the current environment. So we're working through all of that kind of stuff as well. But we're expanding rapidly. We're hiring on new people. We just doubled our capacity with a major capital investment, which was necessary since we doubled pretty much our volume from 18 months ago. So things look great, man, and our people are happy. Everyone's working from home for now, but we've stayed productive, and we're excited to see what happens when the snapback occurs and people are out and about again. When people don't have to stop, people can stop smelling their own breath, and smelling the breath of others.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah.
Phil Rubin, President of TheraBreath, thank you for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.